Good day to you, Ninth and O. This is Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. I'm Brandon, one of the pastoral interns. It's good to be with you today. We're continuing our study in Ruth, chapter 2, verses 14 through 23. As we've gone into the text here, we've already learned that Ruth is a hard worker. She is a very courageous young woman of good character. She's helping to care for her mother-in-law. And so we're introduced and we're pulled into the text here where Ruth is going into the fields of Boaz to gather food for Ruth to eat, for Naomi to eat. And Boaz gives access to Ruth for her to glean and to get the food that she needs to be full, and then also to take some food to Naomi. And so she does that. Boaz instructs his young man, saying to let her glean even among the sheaves and do not reproach her. So she is able to gather this food to provide for her and her mother-in-law. Into verses 17 through 20, we find that, Ruth comes home. She shares the food with Naomi, and Naomi has questions. Where did you get this food? And so Ruth says to her, well, this came from the fields of Boaz. And all of a sudden, Naomi's eyes maybe light up, and she recalls Boaz is a family member of ours. In fact, in verse 20, Naomi says to her daughter-in-law, may he be blessed by the Lord, whose kindness has not forsaken the living or the dead. Naomi also said to her, the man is a close relative of ours, one of our redeemers. And we're introduced to the concept of a kinsman redeemer. Boaz is a close relative who is to provide the immeasurable benefits to another person, who provide those benefits to another person. Here, Boaz becomes a kinsman redeemer to Ruth and to Naomi. He sacrifices for the benefit of Ruth and Naomi. There was one before him, and he opted to not take care of Ruth and Naomi. Therefore, Boaz took on that role of kinsman redeemer. We have here this Hebrew word, watch me, Dr. Betts, hesed, that talks about covenant faithfulness. And so here, Ruth's faithfulness to Naomi is an example of the hesed, and also Boaz's faithfulness to Naomi in providing the food for her. This idea of this covenant faithfulness, this hesed. The story continues on through verses 21 and 22 that Ruth continues to live a life of obedience in the little things. And she follows the directions there listed through Naomi. So what does this mean for you and I today? One, I would encourage all of us to be faithful in the small things. They lead to a greater reward. Faithfulness is rewarded. We'll see later on in the story, we all know the lineage of Ruth and Boaz, who become the great-grandparents of David, ultimately the lineage of Jesus Christ. Secondly, Boaz is the role of kinsman redeemer, reminds us that Christ is our kinsman redeemer who came to provide for us the benefits of which we could not do for ourselves. That's his death on the cross, redeeming us. Finally, remember that no circumstance is too difficult for God. Here you have two widows who have no husbands and they don't know what they're going to do. A seemingly hopeless situation that God takes and provides hope through a kinsman redeemer. The same is true for us.